Yo, everybody. Welcome to Off Panel, a weekly interview podcast about all things comics. I'm your host, David Harper, and this week's guest is the co-owner of Chicago's Eisner Award-winning comic shop, Challengers Comics and Conversation. It's Patrick Brower. Patrick, how's it going?
David, thank you. It's a pleasure to be back on Off Panel. What a wonderful time of the year.
I do appreciate that almost the same time every year we talk. You were on in December of 2016. You were on in January. Wait, what was it? December of 2015, January of 2017, and then now we're doing January of 28. Or God, I have my dates wrong. I'm drunk. You're on a lot.
No, that's fine. It was 364 days ago I was on last.
Oh,
I know because when I opened Skype, it showed that phone call from January 6th of 2018.
Ooh, perfect.
So we're one day off of our 1 year anniversary. Well, I mean, not 1 year, but a year ago. Certainly not 1 year.
I'm always happy to have you on, however as much as I can get you. But, I want to talk, we're going to talk about 2018, how the year was. It was, as we talked about last year, you were coming into your 10th anniversary year. How was the 10th anniversary year for Challengers? Was everything good, bad, somewhere in between?
It was a year. It was definitely a year.
That's a fact.
Yeah, and I counted. There were 365 days. We made it through them. It was a fine year. It was not the best year. There were highs and lows, like any year. We did have a 10th anniversary party where Dal and I rented tuxedos.
Ooh.
And it was sponsored by a local bar and Belvany Scotch, which is quite tasty. It was a lovely affair. There were custom drinks named after each of us. Dal's was non-alcoholic. Mine was extra alcoholic. It was fun. It was neat to. It's weird now, man. It's weird to be doing this for. We're just knocking on the door of 11 years, and this is over 28 years as a comics retailer for me, but 11 coming up on 11 years for Challengers, and it's so weird to have done this for so long, but still feel like I'm brand new at it.
Mm-hmm.
And this week alone, there's been a lot of people referencing the old guard in the comics industry and people referring to themselves as that. And while I qualify based on the definition of old guard, I never feel it. And
right.
The second that I feel like an old guard in this, I probably shouldn't be doing it. Comics are always for now and tomorrow. Comics can't be for yesterday, and I can't look at the way I run my shop as yesterday's shop.
Well, so this is what I'm going to call you. You're new school, old school.
All right.
Because
I'll take that.
Well, because Challengers is the first shop you've co-owned, right? Or owned to any degree?
Yes. Yep.
So it's like you've been in the game, but it's like you learned everything you could working in the retail field, and then you and Dal brought that to Challengers to make it the way you want it to be.
Yeah. And there's a lot of things that we did 11 years ago that I thought were progressive and forward-leaning. And I look at us today and I think, I don't think we're progressive anymore. Like, everybody has come up to the level that we're at.
Mm-hmm.
That sounds super egotistical, and I don't mean it like that. But I mean, a lot of things that we were doing, people are doing. And sometimes I sit back and think, like, wow, what should we do that's different? And then the answer is, don't ever do something just to be different. Do something because it's a good idea and you think it'll help in the long term.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, that's the reason why you guys did the things you did 11 years ago is because you were doing what you felt was right for where comics were headed and where they should be headed. And, one thing that's, in terms of progressiveness, I know a lot of your employees have always been women, and that's not something most comic shops often have. I mean, one of the things that often comes with the old guard is it's often felt like a boys club. And that's one thing it seems like Challengers has never really been, despite the fact both you and Dal are men, is you guys, you kind of have always been like, I don't know, a bit gender reversed for the typical comic shop.
I mean, we have the market covered between Dal and I on middle class cisgendered white dude opinions.
Sure.
So we need other people around us to show us what else is available. And I don't just mean comic creators. I mean, as employees and as just people we talk to, soundboards and friends.
Yeah, because you don't want to be the shop. I mean, that's the thing that's been really interesting over like the last 11 years. I mean, really, I felt like it's been since like 2009 has been like the big shift, and it's like we've seen the market evolve in very interesting ways, and that's kind of it's made it tricky for retailers in a number of ways, but it's been very good for the comics that are being released. I mean, like I was looking at we're going to talk about this in a bit, but your like top 100 list for graphic novels. I mean, Tilly Walden, like that's a person that probably would not have been producing comics when you first started in a significant way, but both Spinning and On a Sunbeam were in your top 30 graphic novels released or sold?
On a Sunbeam was number 24, and Spinning, it came out the year before, was my favorite graphic novel of that year. And I'm looking over the list right now to see where it was, and I don't know where it is, but it's 17.
Yeah, it was higher.
Yeah, okay.
I remember being surprised by that because I was like, On a Sunbeam came out this year.
Yeah.
But I mean, I guess came out. It was a web comic before that, but still first print release. But
sure.
But so let's talk about 2017 versus 2018, because when we talked last year, I mean, you're never really exactly a morose person, but I would say you were down on 2017 in a way that you perhaps are not on 2018. Would you say that 2018 maybe was a better year than 2017?
From a purely financial standpoint, yes. 2018 rebounded to almost where 2016 was. We were down. I have extensive notes, but they're in no order whatsoever. 2017 versus 2016, we were down 6.82% for the year, and that was our first year ever being down. And 2018 versus 2017, we were up 6.14%. So that puts us still 1.1% away from 2016. But I mean, I'll take it.
Right.
I'll take getting back to that level.
Mm-hmm. One of the things that I remember from 2017 that was really strange was you had like pull list customers that were like disappearing in December, and like Christmas, which is normally like a decent time, like sometimes can be very good for shops, was not good for you. Was that? Did you see less of that this year?
So I just did the count. Actually, Dal did the count. We just had the count done on Tuesday, and there were 64 club members that did not come in during December.
Oof.
But that is down 30 something less than what it was last year.
That's wild.
We also have less club members this year because we are keeping a much tighter rein on our subscribers, and we're not cutting them as much slack as we used to. Our rule, like a lot of stores, we want you to come in once a month.
Mm-hmm.
We usually don't bother you until it's been like 6 weeks. And after that 6 weeks, we'll email you and call you to say, hey, please come in. And then you get 2 more weeks after that. So it's really, if you're not in after 8 weeks, that's when we bounce you.
Yeah.
But we've been bouncing people a lot more.
Mm-hmm. Well, really quick for listeners that don't know, your club members are effectively subscribers or pull list customers, right?
Yeah, the people that pre-order the books ahead of time, and we put them aside under their name so they can come pick them up at their leisure.
Did they get any benefits with that, or is that just like club is a fancy name?
We offer a 10% discount because you're doing us the favor. Basically, we're ordering an extra copy for you, so we don't have to guess. You get 10% off because we consider this book sold before it even comes in. Mm-hmm. Like, we don't have to, let's say if we have 200 copies of Saga on the shelf, but we know 115 copies of those are for subscribers, we only really think, okay, we have 85 copies of Saga for this that we're keeping track of.
Mm-hmm. So there is that's nice. I mean, like honestly, like that's a really great reward because I actually have a question in this month. I do mailbags on my Patreon, and one of the questions was actually like basically if I ran a shop, what would I do with like pull list customers to do that? Like, and not every shop does those discounts because the nice thing about it is though is you are rewarding people to effectively, hopefully, make your life easier when it comes to ordering time, so you can figure out how much you need to order and how much more for the shelf you need to order, and et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah, and we use that data to extrapolate out for the shelf. For example, if there's a new title coming out and we have 17 subscribers who say they want this, we'll think, okay, this will have a good shelf presence.
Mm-hmm.
If we have 0 to 2 subscribers, we think, okay, no one's going to want this book.
Mm-hmm.
One of the things, or some of the things we do just to illustrate how hard we work to get customers informed, is every Friday they'll get an email that says exactly what they have on hold next Wednesday.
Oh, that's awesome.
So yesterday, because we're recording on a Saturday, yesterday they would get an email for next week's Wednesday that says, hey, here's what's coming out that we think is cool. Here's everything else coming out. Here's what you're down for the week. And that's so if there's anything you want to add, you can add it before we do our final pulls. If there's anything you want to take off, we don't set aside when you don't want it. And we can put that copy on the shelf and hopefully find it a home before it's too late. And then once a month, Dal takes the previous catalog and breaks out what he thinks are going to be important things, and then lists everything else that's new, sends that to every subscriber along with a complete copy of their pulls list, everything that they're down for, every month, to say, hey, like if there's a Batman annual and Tom King's writing it, we'll say, hey, you get Batman, so we're copying you over to this book. If you don't want to be copied over, let us know. If there's anything else on this list you want, tell us now. And also go through your list and see what shouldn't be there, what you want to give up on, or what have you. And the open rate on those emails is atrocious.
Is it really?
Yeah.
That, I mean, that's kind of email marketing to a certain degree, but at the same time, that is, I don't know. I love that. I mean, as a person who loves getting more information, especially directed straight at me, that, I've said this before, but I wish I was a Challenger's customer. Too bad you guys don't have an Alaska branch.
Thanks, David. It's amazing. Like, I literally had a customer email yesterday and say, hey, can I get a copy of my list? And it's very easy. We use Diamond's Comic Suite as our POS system to manage our inventory. And it's simply, you go to their account, you push a button, and it emails them their list.
That's awesome.
However, since we already sent it out to everybody on December 26th, I said, hey, you got it on December 26th. Here's the email header. Here's the date it came in. Your full list is in there every month. And I did that just to try to educate them, to say, hey, these emails are for your benefit.
Right.
We actually have a form we're giving everybody next week, which is a half sheet of paper that explains the emails we send out and why we do it. And there's been times where someone's like, I don't know why I'm getting this book. I don't want this book. Okay, but you haven't been in 2 months, and we tell you every week what you're getting. So if you don't want the book, you could tell us 2 months ago to stop pulling Action Comics when it was every 2 weeks.
Right.
And he goes, I don't get those emails. Here's the email address we have. Oh, no, that's my junk email address.
Oh, my God.
Well, that's the one you gave us. and I get it. Like, if somebody asks for an email address and you don't know what they want it for, but whenever a club member signs up, we say, hey, this is why we want your email address. We're going to send you this information. So this upcoming flyer people are getting is a reminder. And it's not just a flyer. It's an opportunity to explain it face to face, because we can't just expect them to read it. It has to be, here's this thing and here's what it tells you.
Right.
So like we're doing this because obviously it benefits us if people keep a active pull file, and they manage their ads and their drops regularly. But it benefits them. They don't get stuck with product they don't want.
Right.
They don't have to worry about missing something. And we are never going to get upset if a club member says, hey, can I cancel Tony Stark Iron Man? Okay, no problem. But you can't say, hey, can I cancel Tony Stark Iron Man if you have 3 copies on hold?
Yeah.
We will never sell those books. That their time for those books is over. No, and we tell you when it's coming out that you have it.
I gotta say, unrelated, Tony Stark Iron Man, fun book. I actually like it.
I like it a lot.
It's
I like
good.
it a lot. It's I was gonna say, I would say, I I'm sad you're getting rid of this, but go ahead. But
Yeah.
I don't do that as much because I don't want it to be perceived like I'm pressuring someone. No, I never buy a book a title, like never subscribe to a title you don't like. I was going to say never buy a book you don't want, but that plenty of times that book you don't want has been sitting in your hold box for 3 months. And then, no, you have to buy that. I'm sorry.
I have to say, I'm pretty innocent when it comes to all this because I go in every Wednesday and I check my poll list. And then every once in a while, though, I like say, like, you know, here's an example. Like, no offense to anybody who works on this book, but the newest Justice League book just didn't work for me. And I was like, I need to stop pulling this. I'm sorry. And I get really conciliatory. I feel really bad when I'm like, you've ordered this for me and I'm not going to buy it anymore. But at the same time, at least I'm doing it that Wednesday and they can just put it back on the shelf right then.
Yeah. You're not doing it a week later and say, oh, that one that's on hold for me, I don't want.
I still feel terrible, though. No, so I want to ask one more question about, you know, one of the things we talked about last year. And one of the things that you said you were going to focus on in 2018 was trying to do more events. And I know that you have some stuff coming up in 2019. You have like Women's Comic Night coming up this month. You have a signing with, oh my God,
Lucy Knisley.
Yeah, Lucy Knisley. Yeah, she's got her new book about motherhood, getting married,
about a birth and a baby.
Yeah. And so, like, you have those events coming up. How was that for 2018? Do you feel like that made a difference for you?
No.
Oh.
And it's a hard no. We were trying to shift to experiences,
right?
And no, abject failure.
Interesting.
Yeah, like the only thing, like we resurrected our book club.
Mm-hmm.
It's gone already. We started movie nights. It's gone. Donovan Challenger had a great idea to do a correspondence club where people actively write letters to comics. We rarely got anybody that wasn't either on the clock that day or an employee to do it. So that's gone already.
Mm-hmm.
The only thing that we started that still exists is our Women's Comics Night, which is every second Monday of the month. And while the people that attend it love it and value it and talk about how it's literally, people have said it's the highlight of their 2018 is being part of this group.
Mm-hmm.
It did nothing for us for sales. There are numerous members who are already club members, which is great, but we didn't, like, the people that are not Challengers regulars that come to this event, we see them once a month only on that night, and they don't buy anything. And we thought that part of this opportunity would be exposing them to what Challengers has to offer, and maybe they'll think, oh, this is what I want to do. And I question, now I'm never at the event because it's not for me.
Mm-hmm.
Dal is here, but he's just running the register. He's not, or he's just there so he can we literally have to turn guys away. There was somebody who would troll Dal every week and be like, yeah, so there's this thing tonight and I'm going to come. And he's like, no, it's just for women, non-binary or women associating with people.
Mm-hmm.
It's not for guys. Well, can you tell me when you're going to have something that is for guys? Yeah, literally everything every other comic store hosts ever.
Yeah. God. We're the worst.
So Dal needs to be there just to make sure they're left alone.
Right.
But it turns, and I thought, okay, maybe there's people coming from other stores that are doing this. No, the people that are coming to this, that find value in this, just don't buy comics.
That's interesting.
It's very weird to me, but we're not stopping it because it really means a lot to the people that show up, and they do have a great time. And it is a couple extra hours out of Dal's month, but it's once a month. It's fine.
Mm-hmm.
We did there were 3 people that came to every single book club,
mm-hmm.
but just those 3 people.
Yeah.
And then Dal and I. So those 3 do it off on their own outside of the store.
Yeah.
And they also cannot get anybody else to come to theirs. So, and it's like, look, we love you guys, but like it was always after hours. It was on a day that I didn't work. It became just a little bit too much extra and we felt bad milking them for that much extra money per month. Like, we already have them.
Mm-hmm.
We don't need to squeeze them for more money. These people generously not donate, but they shop at us every week, shop with us every week. They generously choose us as their store. We don't want to be like, well, you're going to buy this month's graphic novel of the month for the book club kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
And they did it because they wanted to, but it always felt like, oh God, we're just taking more money from them. And we didn't want to do that.
Yeah.
So yeah, all of the experience-based things we did not work out.
That's interesting. I was very hopeful in the conversation last year, and I'm sure you were, because you were doing them. But it's interesting because it seems like events shop to shop have huge variance in terms of impact, and obviously that makes sense. Like, every shop is different, every city is different, every neighborhood is different. But at the same time, like, I really felt like that was something that was going to work for you. But one thing about the women's comics night is, even if the women who go to that event aren't necessarily buying now, that's excellent PR for you. That's good for your public perspective
and
perception.
That, coupled with Women's Comics Month, where we showcase. This year, it's going to be 2 different creators every Saturday and Sunday of March, down from 3 because we've rearranged part of the store and we don't have the signing space for 3 people every time. But that also works nicely because Lucy Knisley's signing is in March, so it ties into Women's Comics Month.
That is nice. So you're in 2018, you were up over 6%. And the events weren't a huge impact, and you still had kind of your disappearing act for some club customers in December. What worked? What drove those sales up in 2018?
This is going to sound like blasphemy. Single issue comics.
Oh.
No, single issue comics. Single issue comics account for 47% of our business.
Isn't that very atypical for you?
I mean, yes, but it used to be half comics, half graphic novels. Graphic novels are only 34% now.
Huh.
We're doing more toys, just of straight out superhero stuff, Transformers because Dow loves them, or not even just superheroes and Transformers, really.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah.
So, single issues. I mean, one thing I was really surprised by, and I don't know why, but you guys never struck me as a DC store. But your top 10 was very DC heavy. Like, the first 7 in your most sold single issues were all DC comics, which makes sense given some of the releases. But at the same time, I was surprised how heavy you were on that. Was DC a big driver on the single issues front for you guys this year?
Well, here's the interesting part about that is DC was up 6.7% for us from last year.
Sure.
If you recall, last year, one of the things that got a lot of publicity for us was how bad Marvel did and how many tens of thousands of dollars they were down.
Weren't you down like 20-something thousand for just Marvel alone?
Like $26,000. I don't remember the exact number, but yes. This year, even though DC was up 6.7%, Marvel was down again this year, but only by 0.78%.
Mm-hmm.
There's still a $25,000 disparity between those two categories. Marvel was still $25,000 higher than our DC sales, and that's a down year for them and an up year for DC. The main difference is that of our top 100 comics, well, here's a quick rundown of the top 100 comics. 64 of our top 100 were DC comics. Of those, 34 were Tom King books.
Mm-hmm.
So Tom King, huge for us. 18 were Marvel out of the top 100. 18 were Image. Of those Image books, 16 of those 18 were Brian K. Vaughan books.
Yeah.
The only non-BKV books in our top 100 were Oblivion Song #1, which barely made the list. It came in way at the bottom at number 97.
Mm-hmm.
And Murder Falcon #1 because we had a signing with Daniel Warren Johnson.
Heck yeah.
Yeah. Yep. Those, just Murder Falcon and Oblivion Song, were the only non-Brian K. Vaughan Image comics.
I mean, in a weird way, like, some people might be surprised by that, but I'm kind of not, because when you look at kind of like the recipe for 2018 in terms of single issue comics, you're talking about Batman, because it's always Batman. Mr.
Yes.
Miracle, which is, it's interesting because in terms of overall orders, it's not a massive hit, but in terms of, I'm guessing, sell through, it's a dynamo.
Yeah.
And then when you look at Brian K. Vaughan, I mean, like Saga, I mean, has always, I mean, especially when you look at your graphic novels, Saga is dominant. Saga's a huge book for everybody. And then, you got Paper Girls too. So it makes sense. It's just, I guess, like, what part, like, DC was up, but I mean, like, what do you feel like fueled your kind of, like, I don't know if resurgence is the right word for single issues, but your lift in single issues this year?
DC events, for the most part.
Okay. It's like Doomsday Clock and
Metal. When Marvel does an event, people say, oh, great, another event. When DC does an event, somehow people think, okay, this is going to matter. And people that don't necessarily follow DC Comics regularly want to check in and see what's happening.
Mm-hmm.
So the Marvel events were, the DC events, I consider like Action Comics 1000 kind of an event book because it's, the history of the character and all the different covers and blah, blah, blah. But
that was number one, right?
Yeah. Action Comics number one. It was number one by 106 copies away from number two.
And that's with a $7.99 cover price.
Yes. Yeah. So it's a healthy number one.
Right. Yeah.
But in the top 10, you've got Doomsday Clock 3, you've got Heroes in Crisis 1, you've got Doomsday Clock 5, Justice League number 1, which you can kind of call an event book because it came out of No Justice and it was the big, here's the direction we're going in kind of thing. Dark Knight's Metal is in the top 20 for sure. DC event books make a difference. Marvel event books, not so much.
So does that mean effectively, it seems like there's a real, like, almost caste system to DC's books. It's like the top books were dynamite for you, but then kind of sounds like the rest probably couldn't have done that much if they were that far behind Marvel.
Yeah. I mean, looking at our top 100, when you look at DC, like even weirdly, DC Nation is only number 39, but that's because we gave it away for Free Comic Book Day and we don't chart the Free Comic Day books.
Wasn't it
sales.
A quarter?
It was a quarter, but we still gave it away on Free Comic Book Day.
I gotta say, I really love that. That actually got me to pick up Justice League No Justice and to start picking up Tom King's Batman again. And what was the third thing that was in it? Oh, it convinced me to get Batman or Bendis's Superman stuff.
Superman, yeah.
Yeah, which is great.
Speaking of Bendis and Superman stuff, here's a weird statistic in our top 100. Our Man of Steel numbers, this is how they rank. Number 1 comes in at 34. Number 2 comes in at 84. Number 6 comes in at 90. Number 3 comes in at 99. 4 and 5 don't chart.
What's
going on with 6?
Comic fans are so weird.
How did 6 jump like that? That's so weird.
Because everybody wants the beginning and the end. It's kind of like it's like when you, in the English language, your brain can understand something if the first and last letters are right, but if they're kind of mixed up in the middle, you're like, I understand what it's saying. It's like that with comics. It's like you'll understand where they're going if you know where it starts and where it finishes. I guess that's bizarre. Yeah, that's I don't know. It's kind of interesting because it seems like maybe Marvel's like mid-tier books and low-tier books might have been stronger than the kind of counterparts for DC for you guys.
Well, I mean, obviously Batman and Justice League make up a lot of our top
sellers.
DC sellers. Yeah. But for Marvel, like Amazing Spider-Man 1 through 6 make the list. Cap 1 and 2 do. Thor 1 does.
Mm-hmm.
There's no other Marvel books really, and Cap number 3 is on. I just see that as well.
Mm-hmm.
There's so many other books that don't come anywhere near, and books I love like Ms. Marvel. There's no Ms. Marvels on this list, and you don't even see like Thor number 2 didn't make it. There's no Thor 2 or Thor 3.
Mm-hmm.
It's just the number ones. Marvel does really great at getting people to check in. Ironheart did crazy good for us. Obviously, Eve Ewing is Chicago native, and we had a lot of people show a lot of interest in that book. But let's see what number 2 does. That's the real test.
Mm-hmm.
And it's the same thing with the Ta-Nehisi Coates of Black Panther #1 did hundreds of copies for us. And by 4, we were getting stuck with huge stacks on the shelf.
Are you talking about Space Panther or the first run?
No, the original one. Sorry, the original one.
I don't know. I don't know why I keep calling it Space Panther, but it just feels right.
Well, because it's Panther in space. That counts.
Exactly. Yeah, it's just very interesting because it seems like there should be some reason why Marvel towers over DC, and it doesn't seem like there was anything that was really sensational. It's just like maybe Marvel was like death by 1,000 cuts, so to speak.
It's quantity. It's just the quantity. Now, if you look at what DC is doing right now, you look at their core characters. Batman is awesome. They just revamped Detective with Peter Tomasi and Doug Mahnke, and so far 2 issues in, it's great. Bendis on Superman, really, really like it. Like both the books, they know what they're doing. Wonderful.
Action's particularly good. I really like action.
The Leviathan stuff is wonderful. But they just put G. Willow Wilson under Wonder Woman. They just put Kelly Sue DeConnick on Aquaman. They just put Grant Morrison on Green Lantern. They're taking their core group of characters and saying, these mean something again.
Right.
And it's great.
Yeah.
It's awesome to see that they're giving that kind of attention to those characters. And Marvel kind of does that. But having a new Thor #1, which
continues the previous run.
Yeah, I love Jason Aaron's Thor. Big fan of that book. Not the hugest fan of Mike Del Mondo, but it's not stopped me from getting the book. But that #1 is really not that accessible to people who are coming on now because you're starting at part 3 of a 5 or 6 year saga, you know? And Amazing Spider-Man #1, fine. Very accessible. You not only did you not need to read what happened before, it's a detriment if you did because they're changing all of that.
Right.
Captain America #1, you and I were talking before we started recording how good that book is. But if you weren't reading Secret Invasion, I'm sorry, that's the wrong title.
Secret Empire.
That's the one. Too many secrets.
Yeah, so many secrets.
Wars.
Too many crises, too many secrets, too many wars.
It doesn't mean as much if you weren't reading Secret Empire.
You're also probably, if you don't have any past, I don't even know if they really explain Nuke in that. They just drop Nuke in there, and I'm just like, it's a bunch of Nuke clones. Okay. But I think if you like are a new reader, you'd be like, what? Who's this guy with the flag on his face? I don't understand. But thus the magic of comics.
Watch Jessica Jones on Netflix, you're like, wait, what?
Is that guy?
That's not that guy at all.
He was a terrible boyfriend. Very terrible boyfriend. Okay, so I do want to talk about graphic novels a little bit because I guess in my head, as far as you guys as a shop, that graphic novels were maybe a bigger chunk. And it sounds like they were. But does this mean that graphic novels are down for you? Or does that mean that other parts of the pie are being eaten up by like toys or like other channels?
Graphic novels were up 3.5% for us for the year. Here's some fun statistics because we didn't usually. This is the first year that we broke them down by genre. Superhero or sci-fi, fantasy, or drama. So we can actually chart the breakdown that superhero graphic novels make up 34% of our graphic novel sales. Then sci-fi, fantasy at 21%. Sidekicks, which is all the younger readers' books, is 13%. Then drama, manga, horror, crime, mystery, humor. Those all are under 10%. And then discount trades, because we have half-off trades and $5 trades. And then art books at 2%, which we like. That's how-to as well as sketchbooks or retrospectives.
Yeah. It seemed like, the Sidekick stuff, I don't know how exactly you classify that. Like, I don't know if Tilly Walden stuff would count as that.
No.
It doesn't? Yeah, but
no,
the
themes are too mature.
Okay, so, but it is interesting, though, because I do think that a fair amount of your bestsellers you could describe as, like, young reader aimed and or friendly.
Yeah, so in our top 100, we have 17 books that are Sidekicks books. 3 of those 17 are double racked in the regular challengers as well. And that's stuff like Ms. Marvel, Squirrel Girl.
Well, I imagine Be Prepared probably kind of swings both ways, too.
We leave Be Prepared just in Sidekicks.
Okay.
Yeah, and we clocked in at number 19.
It's a great book.
I love it.
Vera
Love
Brosgill's awesome. Yeah, no, I noted.
Really enjoyed listening to her on your podcast, by the way.
Oh, thank you. She was a wonderful guest. But I mean, Spinning and On a Sunbeam and Be Prepared were ones that stood out to me. The funny thing is, the one that stood out the most to me was Infinity Gauntlet, because I mean, it's like a morbid entertainment, but it always entertains me that Marvel's best-selling trade every single year is something that's like ancient. And it's like the only Marvel trade in your top 33.
Well, that was because of the movie.
Right. Well, yeah. But at the same time, it's also, I think, to a degree, because of the way that Marvel treats its trade program.
Yeah, Marvel trades, they're not printed great. They're more expensive. They add in a bunch of stuff that doesn't really help and people don't necessarily want.
Right.
Marvel trades are never that big of a deal for us. No, I didn't do total breakdowns like that.
I think 34, like the first one that wasn't Infinity Gauntlet, was even like the director's cut of the Vision, which is funny to me because
the
it's like
hardcover, no less. The
right.
hardcover, yeah.
It's like that in of itself. I mean, not that the Vision is really old in the same way that the Infinity Gauntlet is, but at the same time, it is like it is kind of like a new version of an old book, and so it's just, I don't know, Marvel's. Like, their relationship with trades is always really fascinating to me, because they should be this like great seller if they wanted to be, because people love Marvel, but it just seems like they not that they have an adversarial relationship, but it's like they don't really seem to take it super seriously, or they kind of push people to Marvel Unlimited. I don't really know. But the other thing I noted in graphic novels is very image heavy, like top 10. I mean, obviously lots of Saga, but
a lot of Saga.
You didn't do a publisher breakdown, but it seems like Image maybe was your top publisher in there, probably.
Oh, I would say so. I mean, our top 3 books were Saga 8, Saga 9, which just came out in September,
right,
and Saga 1.
I figured it was probably Saga 1.
And that we had somebody who was buying the Saga 1 today, and I joked like, "Hey, you're on the way to making Saga number 1 one of their bestsellers for 2019 as well."
Oh, that's so funny. And now, a word from our sponsor. Yo, everybody. I want to take a quick break to talk about my friends at Radio vs. the Martians. Mike Gillis and Casey Doran host the Radio vs. the Martians podcast, a show that gathers their funniest, smartest friends once a month for a deep dive into science fiction, video games, horror, comics, movies, and everything in between. So far, they've dissected topics like Superman, Steven Spielberg, Akira, George Lucas, zombies, Twin Peaks, Hayao Miyazaki, James Bond, Watchmen, and whether drivers are required to pull over for the Ghostbusters. Find this podcast and its spin-off show, Podcast La Vista, baby, a celebration of the films of thespian and statesman Arnold Schwarzenegger, on iTunes, Stitcher, and at radioversusthemartians.com. And now, back to the show. Well, with Saga being gone for the year, that was I had a patron question where somebody asked basically like, how do you succeed in a year without a focal point like Saga? I mean, like, obviously Saga Volume 9, which came out in September, is still going to sell, and they have the hardcover coming out in June, I want to say.
Yeah.
And so like that's going to work, that's going to move. You're going to still sell one, but I mean, is that something that's, causing consternation for you and Dal?
On the graphic novel front, no. On the single issue front, yeah, a little bit. But our number 29 selling graphic novel for the year is Watchmen.
Mm.
Who is still buying Watchmen?
I don't know. Everybody, man. I mean,
everybody. That's the thing. I want to say 10 years ago, DC had said jokingly that by their count, every comic fan in America had bought at least 2 copies of Watchmen to justify the way it sold. And that was a decade ago. I mean, it's still finding an audience. I'm not worried. There's still going to be, like, again, I sold a copy of Saga Volume 1 today. There are still going to be people that find that book. Something that's always disturbed me is the huge drop-off between Volume 1s, Volume 2s, Volume 3s
sure.
of any series. And lately, with image books, you could sell 15 copies of a Volume 1, 2 of a Volume 2.
That's wild.
And is it people forget, people don't care? Other retailers have surmised that it's people getting it cheaper somewhere else. Image number ones are cheap enough that you don't feel bad sampling a $10 book. But then if you decide, oh, I want to keep going, you'll buy it elsewhere, which I don't know. We'll never know. No one ever tells us where they're getting it from.
Or do they just like stop reading it? I mean, like that's the interesting thing to me. It's kind of like that Man of Steel effect that you were talking about, where it's just like there's like buying random issues. Sometimes, I mean, that's part of the tricky part about all retail, but I mean, comics in particular, because it's a sequential form. Some of the stuff just doesn't make sense when you look at it, like the numbers. I know I'm preaching to the choir with that one, but it is very odd. I do think, going back to Watchmen really quick, I feel like people who fancy themselves book readers, like Watchmen's like that book. It's like if they want to have a graphic novel on their shelves, they're going to have that, or they're going to have Mouse. Exactly.
Yeah.
Or here's my one, Fun Home.
Okay.
I feel like Fun Home. I actually somehow have 2 copies of Fun Home. I don't know how that was a thing, but I have 2 copies of it. Only 1 copy of Watchmen though, so I'm not quite the per capita breakdown for everybody else.
I have a second copy of Watchmen only because we got one that the cover was printed completely wrong, and I thought, oh, this is too fun not to own.
I wonder if there's going to be an influx of more Watchmen readers because they have the HBO series coming.
It's more than possible.
Yeah.
Sure.
Especially because apparently Damon Lindelof is just going to be like, I'm going to tell a story I want, and it's going to be kind of like Watchmen. Maybe. I don't know. Let's see what happens. I love that he's just basically like, I'm going to do whatever I want. I'm Damon Lindelof. I do what I want.
Yeah.
So another patron question that I had was, somebody asked me to ask you about the trend of single issues becoming trades. So like Motor Crush and like Moonstruck apparently both, I mean, I know Motor Crush did. I didn't know Moonstruck switched to trades now where they're kind of being released as graphic novels. How does that affect things? Like, do you feel like, how do you order that once you switch to trades? Is that something that you're like nervous about, or it's hard to even tell?
It's an excellent question, and we don't have a set answer. And both of those books are books that we had the highest of hopes for. Obviously, Motor Crush, we thought, hey, look how great of an impact these creators all made on Batgirl.
Right.
And it immediately did not transfer over.
In single issues.
From the beginning when that series came out, we thought it was going to do way better than it did. And Moonstruck, I was on a creator phone call with Image for that one, and I got to read a PDF ahead of time. Like, this is fun. This is different. This could be a sleeper hit. Our sales were terrible, and I understand why they're switching to trades, because it's not profitable in single issues. And Moonstruck was a book. Both those books became club only for us, meaning we stopped carrying them for the shelf. So making them trade only is a better hope for their survival. But those are 2 books that don't have high sales for us elsewhere. So we will still definitely carry those. But, number one, anybody who was down for either of those books, we emailed and said, hey, this is happening, so we're going to start pulling you the
graphic novels. Yeah.
However, it was Moonstruck that had it was of the 2 of them. There's one of them, I think it was Moonstruck, that actually had an issue 6 that is going to be reprinted in the trade.
Yeah, the person mentioned
unfortunately, people have to rebuy it.
Yeah. It's really interesting to me, like this shift. It makes sense because, like take two books that I really like that one is officially like done-ish, and the other one I don't know where it stands, but like they seem like books that would switch to trades easily, and that's I really love Scales and Scoundrels from Sebastian Gurner and Gilad. Yeah. Like I thought that was a really charming all ages book. That seems like a book that would do well in trade. I don't know if it's going to come back in that way. And I really like Flavor from Joe Keating and Wook-Jin Clark and Tamara Bonvillain. That's another good book. That's another all ages friendly book. And I don't know. I mean, it's interesting when you combine that idea with what you said about how readers like to sample that volume 1, but not necessarily come back for volume 2. Like, how do you even order for something like that?
How do you order for something like that is the question we ask about every single book in the store.
Did I just make you break out into hives?
No. I mean, it's the answer is very low because we can't afford to take chances with books that we have had poor single issue sales on.
But did either of those books, like Motor Crush or Moonstruck, do disproportionately well in trade relative to single issues?
No.
No?
But they still live on where the single issues are dead. Like, we will still always have Motor Crush 1 and 2 and Moonstruck 1 and 2 available. We'll have them on the shelves, but we won't have like 5 copies,
Right. Yeah, so they have like a prolonged shelf life as opposed to single issues, which are just kind of, once it's past like 10 days, 15 days, it's probably dead-ish.
Yeah, even though we did not sell out of those books, they're not on the shelf anymore because we need the shelf space. So those have been remaindered to our dollar back issues.
Gotcha. All right, so let's talk about the dark side of things. What didn't work in 2019? Was there anything that notably stood out for not working?
Yeah, experiences in the store.
I'm sorry. I had so much hope. I'm sorry.
Honestly, like we pulled back on a lot of things last year because of how much of a differential there was between 16 and 17.
Sure.
2016 to 2017. We just wanted to get back to basics and just selling comics, and that worked enough. We weren't that experimental. Like we tried to be experimental with experiences because we were risking our time,
right,
not our money.
Right.
And that is a risk that we'll take all the time. The things that didn't, like, there's always books that I fall in love with that we can't sell. Scales and Scoundrels was perfect.
Mm-hmm.
What a great book that was. Nobody would care. I think that one of the things that's happening is that Dow and I have lost our ability to make a book a hit in Challengers. It has to
Six
happen
Gun
by itself. Yeah, exactly. Those days are over. Although it is pretty awesome to look at our top 100 and still see Six Gun Volume 1 on the list.
Yeah. I mean,
there was a time when it was all of their volumes, but we'll take one being on there still.
If it's not obvious for listeners that don't know, the Six Gun by Brian Hurt and Colin Bunn did disproportionately well in Challengers, at least in part. Didn't they do a signing there? Like Brian and Colin are
5 signings.
Whatever
over the years.
But still, it was a book that you two were passionate about, that you pushed, and it connected with the audience for that reason. Also, very good book.
But The Damned, equally as good. You may say that they've even found more of their rhythm with this book, and it's more accessible, I think. I think a demonic crime book is a little bit more accessible than a demonic Western.
It's also very fun.
Yeah, but Damned is doing less than half of what Six Gun was for us. And that makes me so sad.
Yeah. Same team.
Because it's so good.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't know. I always say that the reason why the Six Gun connected as much as it did was they very savvily released the first issue on Free Comic Book Day. But
Oni, other publishers and Oni have tried that
and it doesn't work
since then, and it doesn't work anymore.
I don't know why it worked that one time.
I wish I knew.
Yeah.
I absolutely wish I knew. None of this stuff makes any sense to me. What doesn't work is the breakout book that we can push from, to answer your what doesn't work, like what didn't work last year. We didn't have any book that we were able to say, hey, everybody, this book is coming, get ready. Like Heroes in Crisis, but that doesn't count. Nobody gets credit for selling a ton of Tom King books nowadays. You could do it with the Vision when no one knew who he was, or he didn't have that huge of a reputation yet. But now that's a gimme.
Do you have a feel for why that is? Like, is it possible that book wasn't there, or maybe the way that readers engage with comics anymore isn't as like natural to have that crossover type hit? Like, I don't know, like Saga's not even a good point. Let's say Chew. Like Chew's a book that's a bit weird that ended up being a much bigger hit than I think people expected, and it's because it was really good and it ended up being kind of easy to sell. Do you think that book maybe isn't necessarily as obvious in the marketplace anymore?
Well, one of the things that Chew really had going for it is it's one of the most original concepts in an industry that seems to have been devoid of original concepts.
It's a weirdly easy book to pitch too.
Yeah, but it's also something no one has ever heard of before.
Right.
it doesn't like what like it's you can't say it's this meets this because those thises don't exist or didn't exist
right
before it. And so look at the success of Chew, and then this year alone, or last year, you have new books by both of those creators. Mm-hmm. You have Farmhand, you have Leviathan, you have Outer Darkness, and Farmhand we really, really bought into and pushed hard, but we also thought we were going to be doing a signing for it, mm-hmm. and that wound up never happening. Mm-hmm. So we're like, hey, we have all these, we have all of Rob Gilroy's books left. Mm-hmm. So like yeah, I'm looking at a big stack of number one still.
Yeah.
As we're recording, listener, I am walking around the store. I'm still at the store.
Here's a question I have, and it's something I'm always curious about. I feel like readers' relationships with the prices of comics is kind of in a weird place in that to a certain degree we've proven ourselves to be elastic, but my God, publishers are sure as hell challenging us on that.
Oh man. Like, just the other day we got a note from Marvel saying, oh man, what is it? War of the Realms is now $5.99 instead of $4.99.
Huzzah. Yeah,
you guys. There's no reason for that.
But I mean, like Uncanny X-Men #1 was $7.99, and apparently Uncanny X-Men #11 is $7.99. Yeah. And it's just, I am a dyed-in-the-wool, super passionate X-Men fan, and I was like, man, a weekly series that starts at $7.99 and then circles back to $7.99. I mean, like that's tough sledding. I'm not normally really that concerned about pricing, but it's just like sometimes it's kind of like you don't want to reward bad behavior.
No, I understand. And like if you look at Uncanny X-Men #1, it's all that extra money because they gave you
a lot more
3 backup stories that kind of play into the main story, but really don't help.
Right.
And aren't necessarily done by name creators. Mm-hmm. I love Kelly Thompson. She's one of my favorite creators now, and whenever her name is attached to a book, I'm super excited. I think there may be too many things with her name on them currently.
I actually, one book that I'm going to buy in trade when I don't think it's out yet is I'm very curious about her Nancy Drew book.
Oh my God, it was so good.
It seems, I mean, isn't Jen Sang-ong doing the?
Yes.
Yeah,
yes.
She's great too.
And they not only do they hook you, it ends on a cliffhanger, and it'll be back in like there'll be another arc later in 2019.
Yeah,
like you guys are jerks, but in the best way. It's so good.
Yeah.
That being said, I really dislike Uncanny X-Men.
Yeah. Well. Yeah.
It is not. It is not worthy of a weekly. But it's honestly, I think it's weekly because it's just bad enough that there's several people I've talked to at Challengers who are buying it, and they think, well, I don't like it, but the next one's out next week, maybe it gets better.
Yeah.
Like if you had to wait a month for the next one, you'd be like, forget this book.
I mean, the X-Men audience is the definitive Hope Springs Eternal audience of any comic fandom. I mean, it's like they're always waiting for the next return. And
yeah,
but I'm curious. Like, do you feel like prices like that, like the $7.99 for that? Like, obviously the $7.99 didn't affect Action Comics #1000, but I mean, there was a fair amount of books that just came out of nowhere, and you're just like, why is this $5.99? Why is this $7.99? Is that affecting your customers at all, or is that like, is it kind of not a big deal anymore because people just kind of expect it?
Honestly, I think that, and this is terrible, but people just expect it and say fine and just buy it. And the people that aren't buying it because of the price aren't necessarily telling you that's why they're not buying it.
Sure. You
just have to assume or figure, oh, well, this book didn't land. Mm-hmm. There's not a lot of, well, I was interested in this, but it was too expensive. You don't get that kind of feedback all that often.
Yeah. I have one more question on the positive side before we move forward with some other stuff. I wanted to ask, I feel like you guys kind of always have like a semi-surprise sleeper hit to a certain degree. Was there anything in 2018 that surprised you with how well it did for you?
Oh, this is a graphic novel one. But,
sure.
The comic book story of professional wrestling.
Oh, nice.
It only came out very, very recently, but it made it to number 35 on our top 100 list.
Is that because you're a wrestling guy, right?
I am a wrestling guy, but it's also so adaptable. Like it doesn't. If you are a wrestling fan in the '80s versus if you're a wrestling fan of just today, there's stuff in there for you.
That's awesome. I have it.
It's not. Oh yeah, excellent.
Yeah, I've not read it yet. I'm not actually a wrestling guy, but it looks great, and I actually like those comic book story of blank books that they do.
Yeah.
And actually, the funny thing is I've enjoyed several graphic novels about wrestling. Like I really like Box Brown's Andre the Giant and his Andy Kaufman book, and so that like I like stories about wrestling, even though I'm not a wrestling guy.
Gotcha.
Yeah, that's awesome. I'm glad that did really well for you.
Yeah.
So let's talk about some of the bigger stuff that's been happening lately. We kind of danced around it earlier about how January kind of brings out some of the doom and gloom stuff, but this week we saw Chuck Rosansky of Mile High Comics and Phil Boyle of, was it Coliseum of Comics?
Coliseum of Comics in Florida.
They kind of, they didn't kind of, they spoke up about some of the issues that retailers face, stuff that, like, for example, Brian Hibbs talks about a lot in Tilting at Windmills, but I think people kind of expect it from Brian. That's just a thing that happens. Brian is going to always speak up. To have somebody like Chuck and to have somebody like Phil, and also Joe Field wrote something that, not everyone necessarily has access to, but those are big names. Those are those old guard guys you're talking about, speaking up about some of the struggles they've had with partners, namely publishers, and namely Diamond to a certain degree, about how like some of the risks are too heavily on the side of the table for retailers. What does it mean, in your opinion, to have these bigger retailers saying things like this? And do you think that could make a difference for that relationship?
I think it's important that they say these things. I think it's important that they speak up. I love the fact that Brian always does. There's nothing that he comes across that he doesn't think. If he thinks there's an injustice, he will say, "Hey, this is wrong."
Right.
And I love that. And it's Dal and I found great value in reading his Tilting at Windmills columns, and we had him on our podcast earlier this year. And he's a guy that has been in this just as long as I have. Actually, I think he's got a year on me. Mm-hmm. And our stores are very similar in dollar amount.
Sure.
And things that we want to achieve. It's important to call this out. I don't think, man, I don't know how to say this without sounding defeatist. I don't think we're getting any results. I mean, right. I know that there's a lot of focus on retailers wanting to talk to publishers, and there's a tremendous amount of risk on us, but they're in the same boat, man. They've got money to make. They've got dividends and quarter growth to show and things like that. We're all in it to make money. It's just that it seems like the retailers care more about the product than the publishers do.
Sure.
In a lot of instances. And honestly, everybody points the finger at Marvel, and that's because most of the problems come from them. Most of these ridiculous cover prices we're talking about come from them. But unfortunately, people keep buying those overpriced books. We're sending them the wrong messages.
Right.
And for every 5 retailers that say, your variant cover programs are terrible, you have to stop doing this, you're killing people, you get one big chain that buys so much that Marvel's like, who cares?
Right.
It's working for us.
Right.
If it wasn't working for them, they'd be the first to stop doing it, because they value money more than we do.
Yeah.
They clearly do.
Which is why those programs exist?
Yeah, exactly. It wouldn't be there if it didn't work.
I mean, this is a terrible way to look at it, but I mean, I wrote on my Patreon that effectively it really almost seems like it would take a lot of closure, like mass closures, for them to stand up and take notice. And I don't think we're there. Like, I don't think that's necessarily a place that we're at. However, I mean, Mile High doesn't close a shop very often, and granted that the Glendale store that Chuck owned closed for different reasons. It closed because of parking and because of rental costs. But at the same time, it's like, if that place was just printing money, it'd be, I don't know if he would have closed it, even if it did have huge rental costs and bad parking situation. It is, Phil's article. I recommend reading it. It's on ICV2, and he writes about 8 different important things.
Problems in the industry with proposed solutions.
Yeah, with proposed solutions. It is kind of. I mean, the sad thing about it is like in a way, what he says basically for all of his solutions is like slash to your pull list customers effectively, and don't really order for the shelf. And in some ways, that kind of sounds like what not that you and Dell went that drastically, but it seems like more or less the way that you made more money this year is really battening down the hatches and not, buying for hope, buying for realistic.
Yeah. And honestly, there used to be a point where you would say, hey, somebody's going to come in 4 months and they'll have just discovered Cover, maybe in a different store. And they'll be like, oh, I need Cover issues 2, 3, and 4. And we're not going to have them.
Yeah.
Because in fact, Cover will have been pulled from the shelf pending its return in its next, arc or whatever, because we don't have the space and we don't have time to waste on things like that. The buying for the occasional customer, or what if somebody is like just got into Thor, where are they going to get the back issues from?
Yeah.
I'm sorry, not from us. But you can't. I was just going to say, you can't buy things hoping that you're filling a need for someone down the line. You have to buy things that are going to turn over quick.
Mm-hmm. The sad thing about what you were just saying is I honestly thought you were talking about a comic cover, not Cover by Brian Michael Bendis. No, it's okay.
And in my head, I'm like, you should stop and say that you're talking about this particular book.
No, I mean, I picked up on it, but it was funny because like I always thought that title was named, I mean, kind of poorly, just because it's like when you say cover, it's just like, I don't know what you're talking about. Like, are you talking about like is this like variant cover number 4? What? But that's not on you. It's just kind of a funny name. Although I've heard good things about the book.
I think it's weird when your Image has a book called Die and a book called Die Die Die. I understand why both of those books are called that. It's
right.
just weird timing, I guess.
Unfortunately named, yeah.
Yeah.
This relates to something I want to talk about though, and that's we talked about this before we started recording. Chuck Rosansky is the king of back issues. He has an empire in like his mega stores in Colorado where he just has all of the back issues. And I feel like, and Chuck Rosansky himself, he said this in his write-up, is basically like you can't be buying for the back issues anymore. Like you can't be buying for the back issue bin anymore because effectively any single issue has like a shelf life of 15 days tops. And like that's a weird place to be. Do you feel you have back issues? Do you feel like back issues are still a thing, or is that like, I mean, I'm sure it's still a thing somewhere, but do you feel like that's kind of dying off? And I guess, do you feel like it's dying off?
Well, our back issues were up 31% this year.
There you go.
Which surprised us. There's a lot of stores in Chicago that were back issue centric that really don't do them anymore. And when we opened 11 years ago, we had regular price back issues. We would go through long boxes, price them accordingly. And then after about a year and a half, we're like, no, this isn't working. People don't care so much. We don't have that kind of depth, and we don't buy. So we just remaindered all of our back issues are 99 cents. And now our back issues come from me digging through my storage locker, which is hugely full of long boxes that I need to bring in, but slowly, because we don't have the room for them. And books we pull from the shelves. If a book doesn't sell, and if we need the space, or a series is over, we need the space, they go in the 99-cent back issues because we would rather get 99 cents than nothing.
So was that 31?
And even though,
oh sorry,
I'm sorry, I was going to say, even though you spend $1 on that book, we're losing $1 on that book. At least we're not losing $2 on that book.
Mm-hmm. And you're clearing up inventory space.
Yeah.
Well, was that 31%, was that up in revenue, or is that up in like units sold?
Revenue.
Okay. So, yeah.
But I mean, I guess it comes hand in hand.
Yeah. But at the same time, when you're talking about 99 cents, like that volume is different than if you're talking about like 31% up in units for 99 cents versus 31% for, I don't know, if you're selling it like $2 instead. I mean, that's a
Sure.
huge difference. I got to tell you a quick story. I don't know if you knew this, but I actually opened a comic shop for 2 days this summer.
Oh yeah, I did not know this.
I did a garage sale in my garage. It was like the nicest comic book garage sale you'll ever find. And I sold pretty much everything for 25 or 50 cents. I was just trying to cull the herd. I even had like
Yeah,
a nice inventory of free stuff. I sold 9 long boxes of books. And
that's great.
yeah, and it was really great too. I was actually had some higher price books too, like ones I was fine passing on that just were like, you know, random back issues, like the first appearance of Apocalypse and X Factor and stuff like that, and selling those for like a kind of on the higher end for what you'd probably be able to find them for on eBay, but they were still selling. And I made a fair amount of money and I got rid of a lot of inventory, but it kind of proved to me that, you know, if you want to move this inventory that is like kind of stuck, like you can do it and you can make part of that $2 back if you know, discount it. And it sucks. It's painful to like not make more of it back, but at least you're getting it out and at least you're making something from it.
And you're giving yourself some extra space.
Yes, that very much so. No, I mean the back issue.
Were you selling, like, do you find that most of your sales were people from the neighborhood, or did you have any dealers or stores come by?
So no stores. I actually planned it for the same weekend that Bosco's, my local store, was doing a Not a Comic Con sale, which was like a big event that they're having. And I live like, I don't know, a 2-minute drive from Bosco's. And so I figured if they were there in the area, then I put up a lot of garage sale signs around Bosco's. I figured that they could drive towards me. And I also put it up on Facebook, which, holy crap, almost every person came from Facebook. And
wow.
Yeah, we had, I think I ended up having like 60 customers, a lot of whom came back multiple times. Many of whom would stay for like 3 hours and would ask me repeatedly if I wanted to do this again. And I think Amber, my wife, suggested that they really just wanted to hang out with me and talk about comics because I was talking to them, all of them, the whole time. So anyways, I also pitched a lot of them on off panel. I have no idea if any of them are listening. So if you are, say hello. But anyways, it was really fun. I loved it. It was really great.
That's awesome.
Yeah, but I don't know. I think the back issue thing is interesting though, because it used to be that, like, I still go back issue diving. Like when I go to an antique store and I find out they have comics, I'm going to look through all of their comics 100% of the time. But it kind of feels like the inventory these days doesn't really connect in the same way as that older stuff. And maybe it's because we're so hyper aware of everything that's happening in comics. I don't know. It just feels like 2019 comics don't have the same oomph as like the comics that were hitting back then.
No, and they don't. And that's why people don't mind paying 99 cents for a book they might not have cared about for $4 or $5 on the shelf.
Right.
And that's why I was going to say our back issues don't really have crazy rare finds from the 70s, but we do. We sold, this is a true story. We sold the Steve Englehart, Marshall Rogers Detective Comics Jokerfish issues for 99 cents.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
You know, it is what you need to do is you need to have, like, every single month you should put one random back issue that's like worth something in your back issues, just hidden. And then you'll get everybody looking through that to try to find that one thing. And maybe in the process, they'll buy a bunch of other stuff. Huh?
Yeah, you never know. I mean, we find some really weird stuff sometimes. Like there was a book, and I don't have it in front of me, so I don't remember what it was called, but it was one of these 90s Jim Lee wannabe art style knockoffs. Greg Land's one of his earliest books ever.
Mm-hmm.
And so I just put on Facebook, I'm like, hey, who's our biggest Greg Land fan? And we just gave the book away.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
You know, I didn't know he did a lot of the 90s Nightwing run until, like, I did that garage sale. I love that run. That's an amazing run. And I was looking through it and I was like, wait a second. This looks like Greg Land. Wait a second. This is Greg Land. And you know what? It was actually pretty good stuff. He was pretty good on that book.
I'm looking at right this second a Greg Land Black Canary Oracle page we have hanging in the store.
Oh.
And it's great because I can't remember the character's name. It's a dude in sunglasses, and he's clearly smoking in every panel, but they got rid of it. Like they white out all the smoke, and they would put the word balloons over where the cigarette would be.
Oh my God, that's hilarious.
Yeah.
All right, so I want to ask about, like, talking about 2019. We just started the new year. what would you like to see publishers do to change things and make the lives of this obviously this is a very pie in the sky type thing, and it's kind of tackling what Phil was talking about, but what would you like to see in 2019 that would really make a difference for challengers from major publishers, major partners?
This is a thing I harp on all the time, but I want the major publishers to market to the fans.
Sure.
I want them to really emphasize to people that, hey, these are comics that we're putting out for you. Don't sell me. I know how to do my job. I know how to order a comic, or I like to think I know how to order a comic, but I can't be the one telling everybody about every book. I can't get them excited about everything. They need to come in. They need to want to come in looking for something, so I can point them to other things as well.
Yeah.
And I mentioned earlier how DC gets word out about their special event books, but we need the publishers to just market their other books to regular people and to stop doing relaunches and reboots. And I know that number ones sell better, and I know that things sell downward over time, and I don't want to be, when I was a kid, but any issue of a book could be a first issue for somebody, and it doesn't have to make completely linear sense. Readers are smart enough to pick it up and go. If it's good enough, they'll go backwards if they can. It's easier now than ever. They could just do it digitally if they need to, or they can buy a trade paperback. You can catch up. Stop stopping.
Yes.
Stop stopping. Just keep going.
Along those lines, obviously it's a different animal, but do you read the Mignolaverse stuff?
That's one of the few things I don't read.
Oh, okay. Well, I love it. And the first Mignolaverse thing I ever read was BPRD and an arc called Garden of Souls. And this was before they decided to start doing continuous numbering. And then stopped doing it and started a new series, whatever. Anyways, but that was back when it was all miniseries, and Garden of Souls was like it was like, I think the 5th or 6th arc for BPRD, and it was like well into Hellboy and everything like that. And it was the first thing I ever read. And you know what it convinced me to do? Convinced me to go backwards and read the rest of it.
Yeah.
And then start buying all the current stuff. And I love it. Like the Mignolaverse is like one of my favorite things in comics now.
Challenger's co-owner Dal Bush started reading Legion of Superheroes in the 5-year later jump that was Tom and Mary Bierbaum and Keith Giffen, and none of the characters wore costumes or had code names. It was just all their normal names and street clothes, and it was the least accessible Legion of Superhero stuff. Great stuff, but I cannot believe he picked that up and said, I need more of this, and kept going. So it works. It works with any book.
Yeah. I mean, it is. I do think to a certain degree that the question of accessibility can be overstated in terms of picking up a random comic. I do think it's better to make jumping on points, but you should do it within the continuation of the actual comic rather than like constantly making new jumping on points, because as Phil noted, those are also jumping off points.
Yeah, and that's a thing that I've been saying for years. But if you look at like classic stories, Batman Year One, that was within the context of its issues. Daredevil Born Again, that was in the context of its issues.
Yeah.
Spider-Man, Maximum Carnage, within the context of the series.
That's a much weirder pick. That's a much weirder pick.
I when I said Spider-Man, I'm like, oh shoot, I don't have a
Kraven's Last Hunt,
one.
I guess.
Yeah, Kraven's Last Hunt. Yeah, exactly. Titans Judas Contract. Really pivotal story.
Right. Yeah, no, it is really interesting. I want to talk about your advertising thing or your promotional thing. There's a reason.
Wait, hold on. I don't feel like I answered that question good enough. What we need publishers to do, what could really helpful, is to thin out your line, only put out books you really believe in. How many books that even have a great concept just have garbage art nowadays? Oof. There are so many books out there that artists that shouldn't have a monthly book are getting a monthly book. And I always remember that one of Marvel's pitches for you being a Marvel artist is you have to be better than their best artist. That is not what they're putting out nowadays.
Man, Patrick, bringing the heat.
They're not though. God, how many Aftershock books would be so much better with just better art. And I don't
Sure.
mean Aftershark specifically. I mean, did I say Aftershark?
Yeah.
What?
Aftershark might actually be a publisher by the time we're done with this.
But you're probably right. But same thing with Black Mask or Boom or IDW. They've got good stories that are not served by the art. And people aren't just going to buy them just because you put it out. And if you're putting it out just because you want to sell it as a media property, that doesn't help anybody but you.
I do think to a certain degree this is a product of some of the recent focus on, I mean, like when you start publishing stuff weekly or bi-weekly and you don't say it, well, I guess Marvel kind of did say it, that like they've devalued art to a certain degree.
Yeah.
The product worsens. It's a visual medium. I mean, you can't have good comics without like at least good storytelling in your art. And sometimes that is not necessarily up to par for all publishers.
And you need to take chances. You need to put out work that you believe in. But I have to wonder, Auntie Agatha's Home for Wayward Rabbits?
I don't even know what that is.
Who's that? Oh, it's an image book. It's an image book by Keith Giffen and Benjamin Roman.
Oh, boy.
And it's an, look it up. Auntie Agatha's Home for Wayward Rabbits.
Yeah, I've said this before, but like I have, long been an Image supporter, but at the same time, I get press releases from them and I look at it and I'm just like, I appreciate this exists. I don't know who this is for.
Exorcisters from Image. I love it. I think it's great. It's so much fun. It's such a clean, fun art style. We can't sell it at all.
Yeah. It's tough. I mean, but that's the thing though, is like, I don't know. I under that premise though, it's like once upon a time, I was going to say like maybe The Walking Dead seemed like a tough sell. Although I feel like The Walking Dead has a pretty easy premise to sell. Obviously, because it's a massive hit. But either way, I mean, I do think that a big hit for a comic could come from anywhere. But at the same time, it's like, you can at least see a kernel. Sometimes it seems like some of these books, I'm just like, I don't really know who this is for, but it's tough. But let me go back to the marketing thing really quick.
Sure.
You said that you wanted to, that like you would love to see books focused on more and being sold to readers. And first off, I do want to say that comes part and parcel with streamlining lines, because if you have less books, you can spend more marketing dollars per book on those books. However, I think that there's a very real reason why the New 52 was such a big moment and why it was such a big hit, was because they actually promoted that in a very substantial way, and it drove people to comic shops, and it was speaking to readers. Not, I mean, you guys were obviously going to order it. It was all of what DC was, but were people going to buy it? And they actually pushed it in a way that made people want to buy it, and not just comic fans. And like that was really the last time we've seen a significant marketing push in that sort of way. And I don't know why that's the case.
No, nor do I.
I know I'm preaching the choir on that one, but I always think about the New 52, and I feel like people kind of sleep on why that was as big of a hit as it was. And I'm like, they actually did television advertising. Although they did that for New Age of Heroes, and it was really, really weird and didn't work. But those were slightly different animals.
Yeah, because people who haven't read comics in forever, when they hear about New 52, they're like, oh, okay, but New Age of DC Heroes, there's nothing to connect with anybody.
No, they aren't curious about what's happening with Sideways, but they're probably curious about what's happening with Superman. I don't even know if Sideways is the name of the character. It just is Sideways.
Yeah, it is.
Okay, so we're heading into 2019. What are you looking forward to in 2019, and what are you hopeful for? Like, is there anything on the horizon that you're like, this bodes well for us?
It's such a weird marketing cycle now that the publishers, the comic publishers, specifically the single titles, don't market anything beyond the 3 months,
right,
or 4 months. Like,
so who knows what's coming in June? Yeah,
so they're really pitching War of the Realms right now for Marvel, but they're already showing so many crossovers and how it goes through Thor and Avengers, and there's going to be a Journey to Mystery series, and it ties into this book and this book. It's like, all right, you haven't even given people the full premise unless you're a regular Thor reader.
Right.
You're already telling us you're going to flood this series. You're going to put out so many things. I'm looking forward to, obviously, and every retailer I'm sure is saying, two new Raina Telgemeier books.
Yeah.
after not having one for years.
Mm-hmm.
Now, Raina is way bigger than the comics market now. You find Raina books everywhere. You find them at Target. You find them, I think my barber across the street carries them now. So we don't sell as many of those books as we used to, but they sell forever. And there was several Raina books made it in our top 100 list, and none of them are new this year. And one of them is a how-to book. She's teaching kids how to make comics.
I love it.
And she's single-handedly going to keep the comics industry alive for years to come by enabling kids to make their own books the way she did. It's one thing for a creator of her stature to put out new material, but it's another for her to say, this is how I did it. Now you do it.
Yeah.
You show me what you're going to make. Like she's literally this book that's coming out in April. I forget what it's called.
Show Your Smile.
Show Your Smile. Yeah, I knew it was smile related. Show Your Smile. It'll be responsible for the next Tilly Walden. It'll be responsible for all of these things. Like this is amazing. Like we're not going to see the fruits of this immediately, but we will. And there'll be people who will point to that book and that creator and say, this is my X-Men 90s cartoon.
Yeah.
This is the hook. And then she's got another book coming out anyway. Another autobiographical book later in the year.
What is it? Guts?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, the funny thing though is I think that like Smile, and I think that Sisters, and I think that Drama, and I think that Ghosts already were the X-Men animated series. This is Show Your Smile's literally going to teach these people how to make their own ones.
Yes.
And I think that's amazing.
The Smile and Drama and the Sisters, those gave you the desire. This is going to give you the knowledge.
Yeah. Comics is lucky to have Raina Telgemeier. Like
for sure.
I don't know if we deserve her, but we're happy to have her, and we're lucky to have her because I don't know. It's funny because you see like Dav Pilkey is like blowing up with those Dogman books, having like 3 million and 5 million print runs and everything like that. But I still feel like, I mean, no offense to Pilkey, but it's just like Raina there's something very important about her and about the comics that she's doing. And that's not to like I said, I'm not defaming Dogman, but like Raina's just on a different level.
No, Dogman is very important for what it is, but it's for a much younger audience.
Right.
And while it's staggering that this Brawl of the Wild had a 6.5 million copy first print run, it's also in the Dogman, huge for us. We did a off-site event back in November, Chi-Tag, the Chicago Toy and Game Fair, and we only brought all ages books, and Dogman was far and away the huge seller. We didn't record the sales for that show in our yearly sales because it was off-site. But that would have catapulted Dogman to the top of the list. However, that was an event filled with kids who didn't expect to have comics there. Dogman Brawl of the Wild, knowing that, first of all, Diamond still hasn't shipped it out yet. Its release date was December 24th. So anybody that ordered it from Diamond still hasn't gotten it yet. If you had a Scholastic account, you got it on time. We got it through Baker and Taylor, so we didn't have it day of. We got it just a little bit after. We haven't had anybody coming in looking for it yet because it's everywhere else.
Right.
It'll sell fine for us. And when people will see it here and buy it, but no one's come in looking for it because they don't have to.
Yeah. Because it's everywhere.
And because it's everywhere, because it has a 6.5 million print run.
That's so wild.
Well, it's amazing. And again, it's I know so many kids that want to just draw their own Dogman comics because they can. It's simple enough that it doesn't make them feel like they can't do it. It's saying, hey, look, you can do this too.
Yeah. I think it's so cool. I mean, I've talked about this before, but I kind of actually feel like these days that there is a path for comic readers to like start young, move up to like the next level, and then like maybe find like the rest of the comics world in like, single issues and trades and graphic novels and everything like that. There really is something for everyone, but in a way that actually makes sense, that more sense than before. And I love that.
Yeah, I can't even understand my path.
Oh yeah.
So looking back, like, how did these lines connect to where I am now?
Yeah, I feel like everybody who started reading comics before like 2005 kind of, it was just like, if you listen to their story, it's just like complete nonsense. You're like, oh, I found a Transformers comic in 1988, and then I watched X-Men the animated series, and I went to a place and I randomly got a copy of the Executioner's song, and boom, I'm a comic fan. And that was like literally my story, basically. So I really quick, before I ask one more patron question before we go, I'm curious, how did Conan do? Conan #1.
I mean, it just came out this week,
right?
So it's doing okay. I mean, it's a tough call because we wouldn't have ordered anywhere near as many as we did if it wasn't Jason Aaron.
Right.
I just read it yesterday. It's fine. Like, if you're a Conan fan, you'll love it. If you're not a Conan fan, there's nothing about it that makes you say, I got to keep reading this book.
The thing about it was when it was announced like a year ago, it seemed like they were making it seem like there was this massive deal and everything like that. And I'm like, I don't really know if Conan has that big of a passionate support in the comic world to make it work. Because I mean, remember when Brian Wood and like, you know, Becky Cloonan and like a number of other people did a book? Like, that was a good book, but I don't think it really set the world on fire. And it was a Conan book. And I think that there's kind of an upper limit on that.
Oh, I agree. And that limit's going to come crashing down because not only is there Conan the Barbarian.
Oh, there's so many of them.
Next month there's Savage Sword of Conan. And then next month after that, it's Age of Conan.
I don't know why they're doing that. Why are they doing that?
Because they have to pay so much for a license, they have to make their money back somehow.
Sure. Yeah.
I literally had one of our podcast listeners say that they were interested in Conan, but after hearing how many books there were, they just said, forget it.
Yeah.
I'm not buying all three, and I don't want to feel like I'm missing out by just buying one, so I'm buying none of them.
Yeah. When I saw, because I only saw the Savage Sword of Conan thing, and you know, more power to the people who do love Conan. However, I mean, that's a lot from the jump. Personally, I would like to see. I know they have to make their license money back, but at the same time, it's like, wait until you see if the first book works before you announce two other ones. But
I completely agree. And, you know, it's Ron Garney and Jerry Dugan on the other one.
Yeah.
So, you know, there's pedigree there. And the third one is Tini Howard and Kate Nemchek.
That's great.
But Man-Eaters is one of my favorite books right now, and I thought that was monthly. And Kate Nemchek draws that book.
Yeah. I gotta say, Garney fits Conan really well. I haven't seen any of his stuff, but he's really good. I mean, he's a guy that I feel is super underrated, and he's actually gotten substantially better as he's aged in a way that a lot of his contemporaries have not. But that's no slander to everybody else, but Ron Garney's really good.
Here's a quick fun Ron Garney story. Years ago, he was doing Captain America: Sentinel of Liberty, and I'm a huge Cap fan. And his Cap, you know, he did Cap when normal Captain America with Mark Waid, then Sentinel of Liberty with Mark Waid. And I was looking into some Ron Garney original art, and it was very, very expensive.
Mm-hmm.
And I said, I don't remember where I said, but I'm like, wow, this art is really pricey. Like, I don't know that it's worth this much, meaning I couldn't afford it.
Mm-hmm.
Ron Garney heard about it and emailed me and said, my art is worth what someone will pay for it.
Yeah.
And he's absolutely right. He's absolutely right.
Yeah.
And 2 pages down from that Greg Land page, I'm looking at a Ron Garney Sentinel of Liberty page, also hanging up on our walls.
Yeah. Well, yeah. The Ron Garney, I have a story that I will share with you later involving Ron Garney also showing up for me, but Ron Garney always hears about it seems. Anyway, so I hope he hears about my positive comments about him, because I'm very complimentary about him in this podcast.
Yeah, you definitely are.
Last question I have for you, this is a patron question. This fits perfectly with everything we talked about. What can a store do to keep themselves healthy despite the ebbs and flows of various companies? Like, is it really kind of what we talked about, where it's like battening down the hatches and really focusing internally, or what is it?
Healthy versus profitable is a very specific distinction to make.
What is the distinction?
And I haven't found it yet.
Well, I mean, would you? It sounds like, are you healthy and profitable, or are you?
No, we're healthy.
Okay.
Yeah, we're not unhealthy. We're not unprofitable, but we're not profitable.
Right.
We are, and granted, when we were writing our business plan 12 years ago now, or 11 and a half years ago, we had expectations of how the store would do financially based off of our mutual experiences in the comics industry. And we dramatically overestimated what we thought the store was going to be doing. And what the store is doing now is where we thought we'd be in like year 2, year 3. Now, that is still 2/3. Like we think that there's we thought the cap for this store would be 30% higher than where we are now. And like in that 30%, that's the difference between profitability and unprofitability. Like profitability meaning like we can afford to live. We pay our rent, we pay for our product, we pay for our personal rents. You know, I own a car. I can afford to drive it, things like that. But it's not like, hey, I'm going to buy a house this year. Things like that. Things that I actually had earlier in my life and sacrificed for the good of the store. And profitability would be at a point where we could do that again, or I could do that again. How do you stay healthy in today's marketplace is don't be overwhelmed. Don't think you have to carry anything. Let your customers tell you what they want, but you need to tell them what they need. Like you can't just stock what they buy because they need to find new things to buy and you need to find new things to sell. And they're going to get tired of the things that they already buy and need to have something else. Like whenever somebody drops a title to add a title, I'm fine with that because that is a balance.
Right.
Whenever somebody drops 5 titles and adds 1 title, that's not great for us. And whenever someone drops 5 titles and that's it, that's also not good. Being healthy, first of all, you have to still love your product. You have to still care about what you sell, and you have to get excited. You and I talked, like there's so many books that we've referenced in the conversation before and during this recording that we still both say, oh my God, this book is so great. You have to still love comics. And yeah, I trash talk a bunch of books, and there's books that I don't think are good. I wouldn't still be doing this if that's what I thought comics were in general. I think comics are better now than ever before. I think that there are so many good comics. Did you read Infidel? Oh my God.
I have not, but I should, because I have a number of reasons why I should. Mostly that I've heard it's very good. It's like Pornsak Pinchot. God, I'm sorry if I horribly pronounced your name.
For me, man. I do not know how to pronounce his name, which is my shortcoming because he deserves all the praise for coming out with this.
Wasn't that like number 11 for you in the graphic novels? Like it was way up there.
And it's fairly new. It was high, but like that was a book I pushed to everybody for Christmas. Boy, it would have been Mr. Miracle if that had been out in time.
Yeah.
But yeah, Infidel is a book that I'm like, hey, I couldn't pitch it as a comic. I couldn't get people to care, mainly because like, oh, it's a 5-issue miniseries. I'll wait for the trade. Well, I made sure you waited for the trade for this one because it's so good.
Yeah. I don't know. I mean, this kind of runs contrary to what we talked about earlier about how it's harder for you guys to hand sell, but I do feel like a palpable enthusiasm can do a whole lot for a book. Like a book like Infidel. One of my favorite things that happens is I get messages from listeners who tell me that they picked up a book because of my hearty recommendation. Because God only knows when I talk about a comic, I'm like endlessly enthusiastic about it. Like I feel like I've sold a lot of The Nameless City because I'm a huge Faith Aaron Hicks fan.
Sure.
And like I'm happy about that. I always just feel really nervous because I'm just like I'm so passionate about this stuff, but it's like my passion, and I don't know if necessarily everyone's going to still feel the same way. But all you can do is share what you love, right?
Oh, absolutely. And we love Faith. We had her out for an event for Nameless City Volume 1, and it did really well. 2 did okay. And I think 3 we sold 2 copies of.
It's a bummer. It's such
People,
a good. It's
like
so
they
good.
they just forgot, and
Yeah.
like, that's it. It's 3 and done. You're done. That's the story.
Yeah. Yeah.
But it's like man. But then Amulet Volume 1 is still on our high up on our list
I saw that.
for the year. Yeah.
How'd number 8 do?
Weird. I'm sorry. How did
Number 8 for Amulet, the one that came out in September?
Okay.
Yeah. I don't know. I feel like when these books are all said and done, like Nameless City, I hope that they do a, like, I don't know, like one of those, what do they call those things where it's like, it's got the big box around it, like a
box set. That's
box
just a box
set.
set. Yeah.
I mean, like, have a box set of that. I know they've done box sets for Amulet already, but when it's done,
Yeah, they did of the first 7
which is really strange to me. Wait till
of
all
a
9 are out.
9-volume series.
Yeah,
What
just
is
wait.
that?
I don't know. It's
Yeah.
weird to me. But I mean, those are
I
gonna be
think
some
it's
really...
the publisher saying, "Hey, like we know it's going to be 3 years in between volumes. We need to keep this IP alive. We need to keep interest going or something."
I gotta say, he actually releases those books pretty fast. All things considered. I mean,
He used to.
he's certainly a lot faster than George R. R. Martin. In your face, George R. R. Martin. I'm
Sure,
sorry.
but I mean, it's it used to be like 10 months, 12 months, year and a half. Now it was 3 years between the last 2.
Yeah, ending a story is always harder than starting a story.
Sure, but I mean,
know.
I don't know, and there's more people working on it with him now than ever before. I'm not. Kazu is a wonderful talent, and he's made us a ton of money with that book alone.
Right.
So whatever it takes, like we're the reason I'm even saying anything about it at all is because of how much we love that book. And Amulet is the easiest all ages book to pitch, and it is always a top seller.
Mm-hmm. And it's, one of the things about it is I feel like you can really sell it to any type of kid.
Yeah.
Because I mean, I like that it has, like, Emily is the main character. It's got a girl as the main character. So it's like, it can speak to girls. It can speak to boys. It can speak to anybody who might be interested in stories. And also, if you just like really like good art, Kazu is an amazing artist. I'm actually in my office where I record. I have 2 different pieces of Kazu Kibuishi art up in here. So needless to say, I'm a bit of a fan.
Nice.
But yeah, no, I mean, I think that's all good those are all good recommendations for how you kind of survive those ebbs and flows. And I hope that 2019 brings you good fortune and that it's an even better year than 2018 was, and you continue to build so you can get to that world of profitability. Patrick, thank you so much for coming on.
David, it is a pleasure. And while we don't talk in person all that often, I listen to Off Panel every Tuesday while I'm going through this week's shipment of new books.
That is awesome. Thank you.
You're the soundtrack to my weekly unpacking.
I'm glad that I can make it slightly less boring for you. Thanks for listening to this week's episode of Off Panel with comic retailer Patrick Brower. You can find his shop, Challengers Comics and Conversation, on Twitter at @Challengers, on their website at challengerscomics.com, and in the shop in Chicago. If you're a fan of Off Panel, make sure to check it out on Patreon. If you back the show on there, you not only support it, but you get early access to each week's podcast, access to exclusive written and audio content, and more. Also, don't forget to subscribe to the show on iTunes or Stitcher and give the show a rating or review while you're at it. You can find it on social media by liking it on Facebook at /sketched, that's SKTCHD, following it on Twitter at @sketchcomic, or following me at @slicefriedgold. Big thanks to all my existing patrons, including Andrew Scott, Jason Goodmanson, Brett A. Schmidt, Vita Ayala, JDC and Matt Gagnon, Aditya Bidikar, Tara Ferguson, TJ Dali, Dave Slusher, Kieran Mark Antonio, WMQ Comics, Akil, Greg Lockhart, Kokachi, Phil White, Ben Becker, Sean Pinello, Ken Heidelman, Philip Sevi, Al Ewing, Ryan Alcock, Nick Michelin, David Kelly, Robert Wilson IV, Nick Paletto, Dylan Campbell, Owen McCready, Brendan Fletcher, Gary Maloney, Jonathan Nilsson, Matthew Groom, Jason Massey, Adam Bogert, Xavier Files, Maria Schweitzer, Matthew Taylor, Tyler Turner, Dan Guarino, Nick Patera, Jacob Sorelli, Ford Gilmore, David Baraldi, Evan Blazer, Brian McRae, Ira James Udaskin, Henning Allers, Modern Magic Stories, Nick Hall, Bruno Batista, Bobby Angus, Bjorn Basin, Darren Neely, John Hendricks, Steve Anderson, Phil Null, Ian Maxfield, Cliff Chang, Benjamin Shipper, Colin McMahon, Chris Palmer, Maxwell Schmidt, Scott McGovern, Nathan Fairbairn, Kat McKenzie, Lou Iovino, Nicholas Kesslake, Greg Rucka, Adam Heifel, Nicholas Gardner, Andrew Corrigan, Fiona Staples, Chris Morris, Chris O'Halloran, Mark Abnett, Mike Murphy, Michael Shirley, Tom Barnett, Jim DiManacos, Norbert, Nick Lowe, James Kaplan, and Mission Comics and Art in San Francisco. You guys are all the best. A quick thanks to the band Wolfpack, whose excellent track Outro from the album Volmilch opens the show. Give them a listen as they're totally rad. Thanks for listening, and tune in next week for another episode.